Welcome to Module 4, Classical Justice. We left off last time with an understanding that there are many different types of justice, and we saw that through Plato's Apology. A short internet search will show you many different concepts associated with the term justice. And so when we begin our conversations about what justice is, we have to be aware that there are many different interpretations of what this means. For us, the concept of social justice is important. And our question is whether social justice encompasses all of these things, some of these things, one or two of these things, and it'll be up to us to determine what social justice means. In this module, I want us to go back to ancient Greece with the ideas of justice that come through in Plato and Aristotle's works. We begin with Plato. One of Plato's most famous works is called the Republic, and in it, he gives us his idea of what an ideal society looks like. And in order to form a conception of an ideal society, we need to understand what justice is. Book 1 of the Republic begins with a dinner party, and Socrates and some friends are drinking and eating and talking about the meaning of justice.
It's clear that you're a good and decent man, so if anybody knows what it means to be a good and just person, it's you.
I have been able to proceed through life with a clear conscience. I haven't been tempted to cheat or deceive someone to survive. I pay my bills. Occasionally I give to a good cause.
So, if I understand you, Pupillus, to be a good person means to tell the truth and to pay your debt.
Well, Socrates...
The main argument of the Republic is an argument about being a good person. The term that's usually used in translations is justice, and what's at stake is a definition of justice.
The style of the book, like the Johnny Carson show. Here we are, we're gathered together, we're talking. Let's meet so-and-so. Let's see what he has to say. Let's meet Cephalus. Well, Cephalus, come on out and tell us what you think about things. Well, Polemarchus, come on out. What do you think? Well, here's that crazy guy, Thrasymachus. Come on out, Thrasymachus. What do you think it is? Well, it's like an ongoing, late-night TV show with these, quote, experts coming on. Here's your interviewer, your moderator, who says, well, that won't do. No, that idea of justice won't do, and this idea. And the audience gets caught up in it.
A man has lent you a weapon and now wants to have it back, but in the meanwhile, he believes his wife's having an affair with someone else and he's desperate and actually wants to kill himself. Would it be right to give him what is?
No, I suppose not.
So, in this case, doing the right thing would, in fact, be doing the wrong thing. And the man defined as a good man would, in fact, be a bad man.
Oh, come on, Socrates. Give me a break. What's the point? I mean, you're so wise. You tell us. What makes a good person?
I have no answers at all. I was hoping, Thrasymachus, that you might tell us.
Well, it's perfectly obvious that everyone is just doing what is in their best interest. The reality is that justice in this day and age is what is in the interest of the stronger party. As a matter of fact, I'll take it even further. The advantage goes to the unjust person every single time.
See if I understand.
Book 1 of the Republic ends with Socrates and his dinner companions agreeing that they don't really know what justice is. For Plato, thinking about the just human being and the just society are inseparable. We can't think of one without thinking about the other. Plato's conception of justice depends upon his idea of the soul. And for Plato, the soul is comprised of three parts. In a work called the Phaedrus, Plato described this configuration. A charioteer pulled by two horses. The charioteer represents reason. One horse represents passion. The other horse represents desire. The harmonious interaction of these three parts of the soul is what Plato calls justice. And so reason, in its most excellent manifestation, is wisdom. Passion, in its most excellent manifestation, is courage. And desire, in its most excellent manifestation, is temperance. All of these three together, working in our harmonious interaction, is what Plato calls justice. And these four virtues, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, are what are called the four cardinal virtues. Aristotle was Plato's student, and like any good student, believed what his teacher said, for the most part. But also, as with every good student, disagreed with what his teacher had to offer.
In the depiction of Plato and Aristotle from Raphael's work, we see Plato on the left pointing towards the heaven, and here he's signifying the universal ideas that he was after. Aristotle, on the right, shows his hand pointing towards the earth, bringing things back down to earth, being concerned with human action and our experiences. Aristotle's idea of virtue ethics is a little different than Plato's. As a student of Plato, Aristotle did retain a number of elements that define Plato's theory, but he developed his own ideas, which in many respects were very different from his teachers. Aristotle's main work on ethics is called the Nicomachean Ethics, and it is the first systematic treatment on the questions of ethics in Western civilization. Like Plato, Aristotle's theory stresses the supremacy of reason and the purpose of nature of the universe. Aristotle accepts Plato's functional account of the universe, that is, that everything has a special function, but he rejects Plato's idea of the soul, and Aristotle's soul gets a little bit more complicated than Plato's. Aristotle begins his Nicomachean Ethics by asking, what are the goods to which we aim? For Plato, the good was something that was not part of this world, although the things that we call good are part of that otherworldly good. For Plato, we would use reason to get as close as we can to that otherworldly good, what he called the form of the good, the essential idea. Aristotle disagreed with this and thought that our good should be found here in this world. Aristotle tells us that happiness must be explained in terms of reason, and it depends on the full realization of our rationality, which is why the young cannot be considered happy. To get to that state, we must live a life according to virtue. For Aristotle, then, happiness is a rational activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. Aristotle's idea of virtue is different from Plato's in two very important ways. The first has to do with the structure of the soul, and the second with the vices, the opposite of virtue. First, the soul. Aristotle's soul is divided into the rational and the irrational, and both of these are divided into two parts as well. There are two kinds of rationality in Aristotle, the deliberative and the scientific. The scientific is a kind of rationality that deals with things that cannot be other than they are, the unchanging truths of the universe. The deliberative rationality deals with the things that can be other, the things that can change, and all of human action falls under this second category. We deliberate about the things that can be other than they are, says Aristotle, and we deliberate about our actions, trying to choose the right and the good. Morality, for Aristotle, is about deliberating about our desires. How much is the right amount of desire? And to answer this, we turn to the other difference with Plato of the opposites of virtue. On this table, the middle column is the virtue, whereas the left column is too little of the virtue, a deficiency, and the right column is too much of the virtue, an excess. When asked, how do we know what the right amount of virtue is, Aristotle would answer that we have to use our reason, our deliberative reason, to determine what is the right amount for us. No one can present us with a formula for telling us the right thing to do. Just as the courage of a soldier is different from the courage of a priest, so it is different for us in different situations. And it is up to us and our deliberative reason, our practical wisdom, to decipher the life of virtue.
Justice is a virtue, but it's different from all of the other virtues in that we display justice towards others. Aristotle tells us that justice is the most difficult of all of the virtues because it is both a virtue of character and a virtue of political arrangements.
In conclusion, what I would like you to remember from this module is the idea of virtue as a character trait and the differences between Plato and Aristotle. Plato thought that the virtuous person had three parts of their soul in order, where Aristotle thought that the virtuous life is one of deliberating, of using our practical reasoning to think about our desires. For both, however, virtue is a rational activity.